I'm Frank Luntz. I've been the host of America Speaks for the last year now, and I've never done this kind of introduction because we've never been through what we are experiencing right now. The President of the United States, literally hours ago, announced that he was not seeking re-election. We had done this focus group Friday night after the convention, asking swing voters, undecided voters, what should happen next. Should Biden be the candidate? Should Harris be the candidate? Or should it be somebody else? And what they thought of the convention speeches and the events of the last month, which truly are incredible. We're recording this because of the events of today, Sunday, and we are going to put this video out. You're going to see it relatively unedited, what voters had to say Friday night, because it's relevant to what's happening right now. Virtually nobody wanted Joe Biden. Among these swing voters, nobody wanted him to be the candidate, and not many people wanted Kamala Harris either. You're going to hear their words, their reactions, and just know that this is only happening right here on Straight Arrow News. So let's go to the tape. It is so rare that I get the opportunity to have a conversation within 24 hours of a key event that may have made a significant difference, a meaningful, measurable difference in the election outcome. But that's what I've got right now. And so I'm going to ask you questions about Donald Trump, about Joe Biden, about Kamala Harris and the state of the race, based on Donald Trump's speech at the convention, based on Joe Biden's debate and his interviews on ABC and NBC, and the potential of a Harris presidency or somebody else, based on what you, the American people, want. So my first question is, give me a sentence to describe Donald Trump's speech last night. Logan, I'm going to start with you.
It was too long.
Logan, give me a sentence about Donald Trump's speech last night.
He started really well, but he should have stopped after 30 minutes. It was too long.
Tracy, give me a sentence about Trump's speech.
I felt that it was inspiring and that he felt a new fresh beginning for himself, and it was great.
Joe?
I thought it was a pity party at the beginning where he had to recap his shooting. And then he went into his shtick of what he usually does at a speech.
Tony?
I saw a change that I hadn't seen in the past 8 years, likely after Saturday. So I thought he showed some leadership in that way, but then he became repetitive, and it was too long.
Amy?
I liked that he was unifying and more subdued, but I agree that the speech was too long.
Sherry?
I thought it started off really dragging and boring, and then, but I was very interested to hear what had actually happened because I haven't seen anything about what actually happened afterwards. And but it was just a snooze fest, really, repetitive, and talk about low energy.
Luke?
Well, it is part of the campaign, so of course he's going to be in campaign mode. I thought it was actually pretty energizing. It was a little long, but you know, his fans can't get enough of what he has to say. They eat it up, so no big deal.
Howard?
It was the best version of Donald Trump we have seen in 8 years. The humility that he showed in the beginning, especially when he was talking about the gentleman that passed away at his rally, it was a little long, but if he continues this up, that's good things to come.
Will?
Well, I thought the first 15 to 20 minutes was riveting. I was glad that he covered what happened. I thought the last 10 minutes was good. The middle part was more of a campaign rally, which I expected, but it went too long. If you could have cut 20 or 30 minutes out, it would have been a much better speech.
David?
I thought it began very well. I was happy to see that he recognized the victim of the shooting from the rally the past weekend. I thought it was a little icky when he went behind him and tried to kiss the helmet. But the speech to me was great at the end. It was really well done at the end. But you could have lost at least 30, 40 minutes out of the middle. It was just nothing was on subject.
And Leah.
I agree. For me, the first 15 minutes was remotely arresting, but then it just got confusing after that. He was one place, he was another, and it was just hard to keep up with.
Okay. Sounds like you're not grading him all that high. In fact, by show of hands, how many of you would give Donald Trump's speech an A? 1. How many would give him a B? 1, 2, 3. How many of you give him a C? And that's where you get everyone. Who would give him a D? 1, 2, 3 of you, 4 of you. And who would give him an F? So nobody flunks him. Okay. David, a sentence to describe the Biden candidacy.
Incomplete shambles. It's becoming an embarrassment. The man has served the country well for such a long time. I hate for this to be what we're going to remember him by. It's time for him to retire. And, as a conservative, I hope he doesn't. But, as a human, I feel for him. I feel for his family. He needs to step aside.
Will?
I think it's in free fall. And also believe it's probably in the midst of a coup.
Chris?
I think my word or my phrase would be concerning, because he doesn't seem fit. He doesn't seem to answer questions. I watched, the interviews with both Lester Holt and George Stephanopoulos, and it was just kind of very canned answers and dancing around, which I know some politicians like to do, but it seemed very deliberate. And I wonder where. I don't know that he is a leader at this point, and that's concerning.
James from Nevada, describe Joe Biden's candidacy.
Well, one question after another. He is a classic example of deflection, They would ask him a question and he would go off somewhere else and didn't want to talk about uncomfortable issues that were bothering, I believe. And also a lot of his sentences were very disjointed and choppy. He'd start something about him mentioning that he was doing good, and then it would end and go so quick to some other area without really completing the thought. I feel bad for him.
Karen.
It's very chaotic right now. And I think a gentleman from Ohio had said that it was like, as a conservative, I want to support him, but then as a human, I think he's suffering and he's trying to do something that may be beyond his reach right now, but he's only trying because he thinks there's no other way. I don't think he's doing it for personal reasons or grandiose or enrich his family or anything like that. But I think he feels caught in a spot where he's trying to do something, and I don't know if he's up to it.
Let me ask you, show of hands, how many of you voted for Joe Biden 2020? Okay, a lot of you. Keep your hands up. Can the people who voted for Joe Biden tell me what you think of his candidacy right now? Amy, Sherry, James, and Logan.
I have no faith in him. I think he needs to step aside and let someone else take over.
Because
of everything that has been mentioned. I think that he is suffering mentally and
Come on.
Go ahead.
Please continue.
Oh, and lacks credibility because of his mental status.
Sherry.
I think his campaign is over, and I think it should be over because the man needs to exit with some dignity while he can.
James, you voted for Joe Biden. How would you describe his candidacy?
Well, back in 2020, we were concerned about his mental capacity and state. And we've seen it gradually decline over time. It's just, and other people are noticing it now, and it's being more prevalent. So it's, gotten worse.
James from Iowa, you voted for him. Your description of his candidacy now?
I think his candidacy is in big trouble. I don't think it'll probably survive through the Democratic convention. And I think that him serving 4 more years is almost an impossibility.
And Logan from Oklahoma.
I voted for him in 2020. I voted for Trump in 2016. And right now he is totally out of touch with reality. His campaign is totally out of touch. It's time for him to step aside. He's not listening to the voters at this point.
So that's what makes this such a fascinating focus group. All of you voted for Trump once. None of you voted for Trump twice. More than half of you voted for Joe Biden, and a whole lot of you aren't voting for him again. Anyone else want to tell me who voted for Joe Biden in 2020, how you would evaluate his candidacy right now in 2024? Howard and Richard.
Well, the knives are out, and his candidacy is in big trouble, and he ought to take the high road and step out.
Howard?
His candidacy is done. He needs to ride off into the sunset and retire for the betterment of the country.
Your advice to Joe Biden is very clear. I'd like to get a few of you to give advice for Donald Trump, particularly those who did not vote for him in 2020. Who wants to go on this one? Sherry, Howard, and then Joe.
I think that Trump better hope that Biden stays in.
Because?
Because that is his best chance. Heaven forbid that somebody like Mark Kelly take a nomination, either for president or vice president.
Howard, your advice to Trump as someone who did not vote for him in 2020?
Stay humble, stay humility, stop with the name calling, stay on track.
Did you feel he did that last night?
Not completely, but a lot better than he has been.
Joe, as someone who didn't vote for him in 2020, your advice to Donald Trump?
He needs to include J.D. Vance more. Last night, you had the 5 big letters up there, Trump. No Trump Vance. It was all about Trump. He needs to reach out more to his partner.
Anyone else here have advice for Donald Trump, regardless of whether or not you voted for him? David, you go, and then Richard.
My best advice I think anybody can give him would be just to be quiet. The Dems are doing it to themselves. So all you got to do is stay the course and not trip on your own shoelaces at this point.
Richard?
I would agree. Trump ought to stay the course and keep quiet, but he ought to be careful of Vance. Vance talked more like a Democrat, praising Lisa Khan at the FTC.
Will, your advice for Trump?
Stay on message. Don't deviate so much. He tends to ramble, and there's not a lot of details, not a candidate, but I would like more details from Trump as to how he anticipates to accomplish the things he says he's going to.
How many of you do not want Joe Biden to continue his campaign? Raise your hands if you think he should not continue. So I'm looking through this and I see that it's well over half of you all. So let me ask you, I'm going to go through every one of you. Give me a sentence as the person you think should be the Democratic nominee going into the general election. Leah, I'm going to start with you.
I definitely wouldn't say Harris, but it looks like it might be leaning that way.
But who do you want to represent the Democrats in 2024?
Really, anyone that can actually get the job done.
But you have no names.
Not right off, no.
Will, who should the Democrats nominate for president in 2024?
Well, I think if Biden chooses to step aside, which I think is his choice, then Harris is next in line. I would hate to see that process circumvented. If I were to choose someone on my own, I would think probably, geez, I don't know, quite honestly. I haven't.
Chris, who would you choose to represent the Democrats in 2024?
I'm kind of like the gentleman just before. I really don't know. I mean, I think we hear Kamala Harris. I don't know that she can win though, which is sad, I think, because, kind of like you said, it is the process and all of that. And I think Newsom is the obvious, despite the fact that he has said repeatedly that he is not, throwing his hat in that race at all. So I don't know who the obvious candidate would be, to be honest.
James, who should the Democratic candidate be?
I wish I could give you a name, but as well, I don't know. I just don't believe that Biden is fit for presidency, and I don't want Kamala Harris to be, president.
Howard, who should the Democrats nominate?
The Democrats would have a great chance of winning if they would put their power behind RFK Jr.
Well, that's not going to happen because he's running as an independent. So of what could happen, who should they choose?
Maybe Gavin Newsom, maybe, but I honestly don't see any viable candidates.
Barbara, who should the Democrats choose?
They need to choose Harris if they're going to tap into the war chest and not alienate a good portion of their base. However, they need to have a moderate if they're going to win with the debacle they're in right now. And I think their best chance at that would be Andy Beshear.
Tony, who should the Democrats choose?
With that being less than 4 months away, I think that Gavin Newsom, it's too late in the game in the process for him. But so to mediate the damage that's now been done, if Biden does leave, I would have to say Harris based on experience and what she could do to motivate certain bases and independent voters to vote that likely are not fans of either candidate.
Amy, pick the Democratic candidate.
I would say Gavin Newsom, just because he's a younger, familiar name and representative of the Democratic Party.
Richard, who should the Democrats nominate?
I think the ticket would be Harris and Kelly.
Because?
Kelly shores up Harris because of the debacle she has on the border.
James from Iowa, who do you choose?
If they want to win, I think their best choice would probably be Michelle Obama. My recommendation might be Fetterman and Whitmer ticket, but I don't think they're going to be able to get past Harris. I think she's probably going to have to be their nomination.
Joe, who would you choose?
I had Manchin until he became an independent. I thought he would have been able to play on both sides and get a red vote. Other than that, I don't know.
Tracy, who would you choose?
I choose Governor Pritzker of Illinois.
Because?
Because he has the money. He's pretty smart. You pay attention when he speaks, and I think he does a good job, and I think everybody else will feel that way too. if he were running.
Logan.
Gretchen Whitmer at the top of the ticket. She's a proven governor, solid track record, and Andy Beshear as VP, Democrat governor in a red state.
Okay, I'm going to re-ask the question in a very straightforward way. The Democrats can have Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, or somebody else. Who would you tell them to choose based on who would have the greatest likelihood of winning your vote? Who says Joe Biden? Raise your hands. Okay, that's absolutely devastating because more than half of you voted for him. Who says Kamala Harris? 1, 2, 3 of you. And who says 4 of you? And who says somebody else? Everyone else, please explain why, particularly those who voted for Joe Biden in 2020, why you don't want Biden and why you don't want Harris. Please explain. Richard and then David.
I don't think the country's ready for a female president.
Because?
Just because of the demographics. And I think Trump would absolutely devastate her.
David?
The country's absolutely ready and we're past due to have a female president. That's not my concern with Harris. She's wildly unpopular. When she ran and Biden defeated her the last go round, I'm not sure if she even made it in the last 4 or 5, but to have the greatest shot to win this thing, it can't be anybody that's currently in the Oval or in the building. They're going to have to outsource it.
Anyone else here who voted for Joe Biden and don't want either Biden or Harris to lead the Democrats? Howard, Karen, Joe, and then James. Howard?
Kamala Harris does not have the proven track record, the proven leadership, the necessary skills in order to be an effective leader, effective president.
Agree.
Karen, you voted for Joe Biden, yet you don't want Biden or Harris as the Democratic nominee. Explain that.
I don't think they can win. I think they've got too much against them right now, and they're carrying an awful lot of baggage. And whether it's from the campaign or just all these questions that are being raised.
I think it's time for President Biden to step down, step aside. And on the other hand, as far as Vice President Kamala Harris, she lacks the presidential leadership qualities that I would want to come from somebody that's running for the seat, the ticket. Her track record, and not because she's a woman, but that's I have to say.
Sherry, you voted for Biden, but you don't want Biden or Harris. Tell me why.
Well, I think that Biden needs to go out with his boots on. And now let's go ahead and look forward and look at Harris. Everything the administration has done will be hung on her, whether that's right or wrong. And she was given the portfolio of the border. Nobody wants any part of that. So let's go ahead. If I were advising the Democrats, I would say, let's go ahead, find someone without any of this baggage. Yay, fresh start.
James from Iowa.
Yeah, I don't think Biden will be able. His decline is just getting too severe. I don't think he'll be able to serve 4 more years. Harris, I've never found her very effective. I can't really say of anything she's done as a vice president. Plus, when I've heard her talk, she doesn't have much of substance to say. She doesn't say anything that I've found to be intelligent.
Right.
Anybody else here?
Frank, can I just
doesn't want Biden or Harris?
I voted for Joe Biden because he said that he was going to run 1 term and be a transitional president. And now he, in both of the interviews, says that the job's not finished. Well, I'm sorry, it's not his job to complete. He told us that he was going to be a uniter and pass the torch, and he can't do it anymore. And Harris is for better or worse tagged along with that, and she's very divisive.
You are or were undecided. You're the kind of voters that these candidates care about. Give me a name of someone who you would consider voting for on the Democratic side for president, or you can say, I don't know. Logan, you start.
Whitmer, because she has a proven track record in Michigan.
Tracy.
I don't know.
Joe.
I don't know.
James from Iowa.
Fetterman from Pennsylvania, because I think he makes more sense than most politicians.
Barbara.
Bashir, because I think that we need someone who's moderate. We need to move back more toward the middle.
Tony.
Biden, because he's shown and has a proven track record of decades of about 50 years of working with Republican and Democrats, and he's got legislation passed in 2021 and since he's been in office, which this country desperately needs.
Sherry.
Gretchen Whitmer, because she has been the executive officer of a state.
Richard.
Bashir,
Because
he's a moderate and from middle America, one of the flyover states.
Chris.
I don't know.
James from Nevada.
I want to say Bashir, but I honestly don't know.
Karen.
Whitmer, Michigan. She's very strong.
Luke.
I do not know.
Howard.
John Ossoff from Georgia. He went over a red state, and that could potentially be a great stepping stone for presidency.
Will.
Honestly, don't know.
David.
I don't know.
Leah.
I don't know either.
Amy.
I don't know.
I gotta tell you, my reaction is, oh my God. You're not choosing Harris. Only one of you chose Biden. I know you're undecided, or you were undecided. I've never seen a situation like this before. And there you have it. Undecided voters, swing voters, people who will make the difference in the next presidential campaign, and they are unanimous in agreeing that Joe Biden should not have been the Democratic candidate, and almost unanimous in preferring somebody other than Kamala Harris. This is one of those special moments that you can see only right here on Straight Arrow News. I'm Dr. Frank Luntz, and I'll see you again soon.